The Tycoon's Tumble, a pregnant wife's unexpected entrance. Subscribe to our channel. Like this video. Comment your thoughts below. The air in the opulent ballroom of the Grand Crystal Renaissance Hotel was thick enough to cut with a diamond knife. Chandeliers, dripping with glittering crystals, reflected the icy tension that gripped every guest. At the heart of it all stood Sterling Hayes, a self-made tech billionaire, perfectly tailored in a midnight blue tux, proudly showcasing his stunning mistress to New York's elite. Gasps rippled through the hushed crowd, polite whispers barely concealing their shock at his audacious display. Suddenly, the grand double doors burst open. All eyes snapped to the entrance. A young woman, visibly pregnant, entered with an almost ethereal grace. It was Eleanor Hayes, Sterling's wife. But what truly stole everyone's breath was the man by her side. The elusive and immensely powerful CEO, Victor Thorne, a billionaire known for fiercely guarding his privacy, now appearing ready to shield Eleanor at any cost. The scandal was about to ignite, and no one in that room would emerge unscathed. What would you do if your partner humiliated you publicly like this? Share your immediate reaction in the comments. The Gilded Cage and a shocking revelation. The Grand Crystal Renaissance Hotel boasted one of the city's most extravagant ballrooms. Its vast marble floors gleamed, mirroring the golden glow of the crystal chandeliers. Fresh flower arrangements, flown in from Holland, infused the air with the delicate scent of tulips and lilies. Hundreds of guests, adorned in their finest attire, mingled, air-kissing and discussing stock prices, private jets, and upcoming mergers. This was the Bright Futures Gala, the city's most prestigious annual event, renowned for raising millions for underprivileged youth education. Sterling Hayes, the much-anticipated host, commanded attention. Tall, charismatic, and with an imposing presence, he had clawed his way up from humble beginnings, fueled by insatiable ambition. Not long ago, he was just another junior executive at Ambertech, but a stroke of luck, or, as some whispered, a shrewd maneuver, catapulted him to the top. He acquired a bankrupt software startup for a pittance and transformed it into a digital empire. By 35, his fortune exceeded 9 figures. Yet, with all his success came a simmering arrogance, one he shamelessly displayed tonight. Beneath the majestic chandeliers, to the refined strains of a string quartet playing Mozart, Sterling made his grand entrance. On his arm was Laura Dubois, a breathtaking brunette. For months, rumors had swirled about her. Some called her his new marketing director. Others hinted at an enigmatic European socialite. But the mischievous glint in Sterling's eyes betrayed a far more scandalous truth. Laura wore a dazzling crimson gown that clung to every curve, sparking a wave of murmurs. It was a bold statement, especially since everyone knew Sterling was a married man. His wife, Eleanor, was conspicuously absent. Sterling took the microphone, his voice easily cutting through the crowd's murmur. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at the Bright Futures Gala. We have an incredible evening planned, with a special announcement later tonight. Enjoy the party, and remember, every dollar raised tonight empowers the next generation. With a confident smile, he offered his arm to Laura and led her off the stage, where they were immediately swarmed by the city's most influential figures. One of them, Marcus Thorne, CEO of Thorne Industries, clapped Sterling on the shoulder, raising an eyebrow at Laura. "Well, Sterling, you certainly don't waste time," Marcus quipped, low enough to seem discreet, yet loud enough for curious ears. Sterling just smirked. He reveled in the attention, even when it bordered on indecency. He fed on speculation and envy. What he didn't know was that his grand spectacle was about to crumble in a way he could never have imagined. Because Eleanor, his 6 months pregnant wife, was already en route. And she wasn't alone. By her side was Victor Thorne, the reclusive billionaire, known for his secret philanthropic projects. Sterling believed he controlled the night, but destiny and karma were aligning, and his show was about to spiral completely out of control. Eleanor's awakening and Victor's arrival. Hours earlier, Eleanor Hayes sat in the living room of her majestic residence outside the city. The mansion was a testament to Sterling's success. Grand pillars, an expansive driveway, and meticulously manicured gardens fit for a palace. Eleanor, however, found no solace there. The vast rooms and sun-drenched gardens no longer offered the comfort they once did. 6 months into her pregnancy, she had noticed Sterling's gradual detachment. The man who once massaged her feet and brought her midnight cravings now rarely slept in the same bed. He was always busy with business dinners that stretched into the early hours. Eleanor tried to rationalize it, telling herself it was just a stressful phase. But the evidence to the contrary had become impossible to ignore. Initially, she had decided not to attend the Bright Futures Gala. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, and pregnancy hormones amplified her distress. But an unexpected call changed everything. It was from Sarah Jenkins, one of her closest childhood friends, and also a legal advisor at Sterling's company. Sarah's voice trembled as she urged Eleanor to attend the gala. "Eleanor, I don't want to alarm you, but Sterling plans to bring someone tonight. Someone he's been seeing. You have to be there." Her whisper revealed her fear of consequences. Eleanor's heart pounded. Her hand instinctively flew to her belly. She had suspected Sterling's infidelity for some time, but the idea of him parading it publicly was a humiliation too great to bear. A wave of emotions, rage, sorrow, betrayal, washed over her. She hung up without responding, tears burning in her eyes. For the next hour, Eleanor sat motionless by her luxurious living room window, watching the setting sun cast a golden hue on the rose bushes Sterling had once planted as a romantic gesture. How much had things changed? She clenched her fist against the glass, betrayal searing through her veins. Just then, her butler, Bernard, discreetly cleared his throat to announce a visitor. Startled, Eleanor turned and saw Victor Thorne crossing her threshold. Victor's presence was unexpected, yet comforting. They shared a history. Victor had mentored Sterling in his early years, and through that had formed a friendship with Eleanor. However, over time, he had withdrawn from public life, appearing on rare occasions. "Eleanor," Victor said softly, concern etched on his face. "I've heard disturbing things about Sterling. I want to help." Eleanor couldn't hold back her tears. "He's bringing his mistress tonight, in public. I can't believe he's doing this to me, especially now." Victor hesitated. Then he placed a firm but understanding hand on her shoulder. "You shouldn't go through this alone. If you decide to go, I'll be by your side. You have my full support." Eleanor swallowed hard, feeling her resolve solidify. She would no longer be the submissive wife who waited in silence. If Sterling wanted to parade his affair before the city's elite, she would confront him head-on. And she wouldn't be alone. 2 hours later, Eleanor donned a dazzling midnight blue maternity gown. She looked at herself in the mirror, noticing the glow her pregnancy and newfound determination gave her. She felt strength coursing through her veins. She stepped into Victor's elegant black Bentley, and together they headed to the gala, unaware that their arrival would unleash a chain of events that would change their lives forever. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you decided to stand up for yourself against all odds? Tell us about it. Lara's ascent and Sterling's reckoning. Lara Dubois was no stranger to power and wealth. Born Cassie Marsh in a modest suburb outside London, she learned early how quickly fortune could turn its back. Her father lost his job when she was 12, and her chronically ill mother struggled to keep their home afloat. Poverty came knocking, bringing despair. It was then that Lara made a vow. She would never again be vulnerable. She would never again be poor. She discovered her natural talents in her teens. A sharp mind, keen intuition, and undeniable beauty. By 20, she was dating older, successful men. Each relationship elevated her status. Each man taught her valuable lessons about business, connections, and manipulation. Soon, Lara understood that the true currency in high society wasn't just money. It was secrets, and she became adept at unearthing them. After a string of relationships that ended with lucrative gains, she ventured internationally, frequenting exclusive gatherings in Monaco, Hong Kong, and Dubai. Eventually, she arrived in the US, where she connected with tycoons like Hector Cruz, a powerful New York real estate investor, and later, a shipping magnate in Los Angeles. These men, however, were merely stepping stones. Lara sought her grand prize. Someone with the same hunger for status as her, someone she could cling to for longer. Then, she met Sterling Hayes at a private investor conference in San Francisco. It wasn't just his attractiveness that captivated her. What truly drew her in was his relentless ambition and the way he commanded a room. Their flirtation began subtly. Long conversations in hotel bars, shared trips to exclusive dinners. Sterling was bold and brilliant, an intoxicating combination that fascinated her. He wasn't just rich. He was on the verge of exploding into the highest echelons of global wealth. In him, Lara saw an opportunity, a kindred spirit in a way. Sterling, for his part, bored with his seemingly perfect marriage, was enchanted by Lara's audacity and sophistication. He enjoyed how she could discuss the stock market and global politics one moment, and the next captivate an entire table of influential people. But Lara had bigger ambitions than simply being a discreet mistress. She wanted to be center stage. She wanted influence. She wanted to rub shoulders with the city's elite, not hide in the shadows of luxury hotels. So, when Sterling proposed she accompany him to the Bright Futures Gala, she accepted without hesitation. He practically boasted that this would be their grand unveiling as a power couple, though he never mentioned how he planned to handle the scandal of still being married to Eleanor. Lara, meanwhile, reveled in the idea of being admired by the city's most influential people. She also suspected Sterling would soon propose an even more lucrative arrangement. Standing beside Sterling on stage, Lara Dubois felt she had finally arrived. The scandalous murmurs of the attendees only fueled her ego. She was determined to use this night to propel herself further up the social ladder. What she didn't anticipate was the sudden arrival of the only woman whose place she wanted to usurp, accompanied by one of the few men in the world capable of eclipsing Sterling Hayes. Sterling's humble roots and Eleanor's steadfast love. Long before Sterling Hayes donned tailored suits and flashed million-dollar smiles for the cameras, he was simply John, a kid from the suburbs of Oklahoma City, the son of two hard-working, middle-class parents. From an early age, Sterling showed a natural talent for business. He was the kid who turned a simple lemonade stand into a mini-franchise, convincing his friends to chip in money in exchange for a share of the profits. Thanks to scholarships and part-time jobs, Sterling managed to get into a prestigious business school, where his ambition was forged into unyielding determination. He enrolled in every competition, joined every business club, and tirelessly built a network of contacts. His peers admired him, but some also whispered that he was too aggressive, too ruthless in his approach. After graduation, he landed an entry-level position at Ambit, a mid-sized tech firm. His superiors noticed his relentless energy and assigned him to projects that required quick, creative solutions. Over the years, Sterling built a select network of mentors. One of them was Victor Thorne, then a powerful venture capitalist. Victor recognized Sterling's potential and began inviting him to high-level meetings, teaching him the art of reading a room, persuading investors, and navigating tricky situations. But as Sterling ascended, so did his ego. The pivotal moment came when he received insider information about a failing startup specializing in machine learning software for e-commerce. While other investors saw risk, Sterling saw a goldmine. He raised capital partly from his savings and partly from small investors, and bought the startup for a fraction of its potential value. In the following years, he redesigned the company to develop advanced consumer analytics systems. Fortune smiled upon them, as did the market. Contracts from the world's largest retailers poured in. His net worth skyrocketed. Lavish events, extravagant travel, and prime real estate soon followed. And then there was Eleanor. They met when she was working as an HR consultant at a gala where Sterling was the keynote speaker. Her warmth and genuine nature managed to break through Sterling's shell of ambition. They fell in love quickly. Even Victor Thorne, who had grown skeptical of Sterling's aggressive tactics, was moved to see how Eleanor seemed to soften him. For a time, Sterling was truly happy. Their wedding was a high society event, elegant, exclusive, and the talk of the tabloids. But success never sated Sterling's ambition. He plunged deeper into business expansions, closing deals in Asia and the Middle East, rarely returning home before midnight. Slowly, the affection he once showed Eleanor faded, replaced by a simmering dissatisfaction. He began to resent her sweet reminders to balance work with family life, seeing them as chains restricting his unstoppable rise. That's when Laura Dubois entered his life. Her calculating ambition matched his own. The romance with her became an intoxicating escape from the domesticity he felt was a burden. And so, at the Bright Futures Gala, Sterling was ready to make a statement with Laura by his side. But, behind his eyes, still flickered the memory of the man he once was. Hardworking, brilliant, lovingly devoted. The real question was, would that trace of conscience matter when he came face to face with his pregnant wife, accompanied by the very mentor he once idolized? The road to the Grand Crystal Renaissance Hotel. During the tense drive to the Grand Crystal Renaissance Hotel, Eleanor inhaled deeply, trying to calm her nerves. She refused to show up a mess. If anything, she wanted to appear composed, serene, even regal. For too long, she had played the role of the understanding wife, offering endless empathy and second chances. Tonight would be different. In the elegant Bentley, Victor Thorne asked softly, "Are you sure you want to do this? Facing Sterling in front of everyone won't be easy." Eleanor straightened her shoulders, her hands resting protectively on her growing belly. "I have to. I can't let him think he can parade his affair without consequences. If I hide, he wins. I'm tired of being a spectator in my own life." From her purse, she pulled out an envelope, a thick manila file, brimming with documents. It was her secret weapon. For the past month, as doubts about Sterling grew, she had hired a private investigator, not just to document his infidelity, but to delve deep into his business dealings. The results, delivered just days prior, shocked her. Fraudulent transactions, undeclared shell companies, suspicious offshore accounts. Sterling was walking on the edge of legality. If these details went public, he could be ruined. But Eleanor didn't intend to destroy him. Not yet. She just wanted him to know she wasn't naive. If Sterling thought he could quietly divorce her later and cast her aside without resistance, he was sorely mistaken. This was her insurance policy. For her child. Victor glanced at the file, recognizing official stamps and financial statements. His expression turned grave. This is serious. If the Securities and Exchange Commission or any law enforcement agency saw these documents. Eleanor pressed her lips together. "I know, but it's the only leverage I have. I don't plan to make them public, unless he forces my hand." For once, Sterling would face the consequences of his actions. Victor nodded, a mix of admiration and concern on his face. Once, he had seen Sterling as a protege, a man with the potential to change the world for the better. Now, that same man teetered on the brink of scandal and possibly prison. Still, his loyalty was with Eleanor and the child she carried. Perhaps this confrontation would bring Sterling back to his senses. The grand entrance and the looming showdown. When the black Bentley pulled up to the entrance of the Grand Crystal Renaissance Hotel, flashes erupted. Paparazzi expected to photograph celebrities and tycoons, but when they saw Victor Thorne stepping out of the car alongside Sterling Hayes' pregnant wife, the crowd went wild. Microphones extended. Cameras flashed. Shouted questions filled the air. Eleanor inhaled deeply. She took Victor's offered hand and allowed him to guide her along the red carpet. She could feel the tension as they entered the lobby. Furtive glances, whispers darting back and forth. Her heart pounded, but her gaze was pure steel. Soon, she would be face to face with Sterling and his mistress. And when that moment came, she would not break. Not this time. Victor Thorne's name resonated in the most exclusive circles. A decade ago, his investment firm, Thorne Capital, had shaken the tech world by funding revolutionary startups. His investments shaped modern e-commerce and artificial intelligence. His almost supernatural intuition for spotting successful businesses made him a legend. But a tragic event changed everything. The death of his younger sister in a car accident. Devastated, He announced his complete withdrawal from public life, focusing instead on philanthropic projects in forgotten corners of the world. No one expected to see him at the Bright Futures Gala, and certainly not as Eleanor Hayes's protector. Rumors exploded among the guests. Were Eleanor and Victor romantically involved? Was this a large-scale business move? Some remembered that Victor had been Sterling's mentor, which only fueled the scandalous fire. The unfolding confrontation. When Victor and Eleanor entered the grand ballroom, everyone fell silent. Tall, slender, and impeccably dressed, Victor exuded a contained calm, an innate sophistication that contrasted sharply with Sterling's ostentatious arrogance. While Sterling projected the swagger of new money, Victor embodied old-school class. With a steady stride, he escorted Eleanor through the crowd, ignoring the journalists' questions. His attention was solely on her. Eleanor thanked him silently. Despite the whirlwind of stares and whispers, she felt a strange peace beside him. Her earlier anxiety dissipated, replaced by fierce determination. Together, they projected an imposing image of unity, the wronged wife protected by a powerful man. Across the ballroom, Sterling and Laura were chatting with Marcus Thorne and a group of elite investors. When he saw Eleanor enter with Victor, his confident smile wavered for a split second. A flash of panic crossed his eyes. He recovered quickly, forcing a tense smile. But Laura felt the rigidity in his arm as he squeezed her elbow harder than necessary. "Victor is here," Sterling whispered, his voice tight. Laura frowned. "So what? Who is he to you?" Sterling swallowed hard. "My former mentor. And that's my wife." He turned, his voice dropping to a murmur. From across the room, Victor held Sterling's gaze, giving him a slight, polite nod, but with an unmistakable undertone of disapproval. Eleanor also lifted her chin. She wasn't backing down. She was heading straight for the man who had betrayed her. Laura quickly understood the gravity of the situation. If Victor Thorne was involved, this wasn't a simple marital dispute. Sterling exhaled, shaking off the shock. He placed a possessive hand on Lara's waist. With forced calm, he led her towards the newly arrived duo. A silence spread through the attendees. The four stopped mere inches apart, an invisible storm crackling in the air. With a tense smile, Sterling broke the silence. "Eleanor, I didn't know you were coming tonight." His gaze darted fleetingly to Victor before returning to her. "And I see you've brought quite a distinguished escort." Eleanor's expression was calm, but icy. "Hello, Sterling. I hope I'm not interrupting your grand night." At that instant, Victor gave her a slight nod, a silent signal that he was there for her, no matter what happened next. "Can you feel the tension building? What do you think Eleanor's next move will be? Let us know your predictions." The showdown on the terrace. The guests held their breath, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. Like spectators in an arena, they watched Sterling Hayes and his pregnant wife come face to face, each backed by their own companion. In the background, the string quartet continued to play a melody that sounded strangely discordant against the tension filling every corner of the ballroom. Eleanor felt her pulse quicken as she fixed her gaze on Sterling. Memories hit her like stormy waves. Their wedding day, quiet nights by the fireplace, the moment they discovered they would be parents. But the man before her now looked more like a stranger than her once loving husband. Sterling forced a charming smile. "Eleanor, you look radiant. I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you'd be resting at home." His attempt at light banter bordered on ridiculous. But before Eleanor could respond, Laura, still clinging to his arm, interjected. "Sterling invited me to help organize the gala. After all, it's an important night for the Bright Futures Foundation, and I am deeply committed to philanthropy." Her saccharine tone only fueled Eleanor's anger. She felt her nails dig into her palms but kept her voice serene. "How kind of you, Laura. I'm sure your passion for Sterling's causes extends far beyond philanthropy." A murmur swept through the room. Laura tensed, her eyes gleaming with contained fury. Sterling stopped smiling. His expression hardened into a warning glare. But if he thought Eleanor would back down, he was sorely mistaken. Eleanor pressed on, now addressing Sterling directly. I came because I deserve to see who you're parading. And also, so you know that neither our child nor I will be discarded. Beside her, Victor placed a firm, reassuring hand on her arm. Then he spoke, his tone calm but laden with authority. Sterling, I'm disappointed. This is not the man I once mentored. This public humiliation of your wife is beneath you. Beneath everything we worked for. Something in Victor's words seemed to shake Sterling, eliciting a flicker of guilt before his face hardened again. He couldn't afford a scandal. Not here. Not in front of everyone. His gaze swept over the expectant crowd. His image was paramount. I think we should continue this conversation in private, Sterling said, lowering his voice. Eleanor, Victor, let's go to the terrace. The attendees parted, making way as if they were the Red Sea. The four, followed by a handful of the most curious guests, crossed the ornate double doors leading outside. But the main ballroom did not return to normal. The whispered speculations and frantic messages continued their course. The city lights twinkled in the distance, an ironic contrast to the darkness gathering between them. A gentle breeze brushed their faces but did not alleviate the tension in the air. Sterling turned to Eleanor, frustration palpable in his tone. Why bring Victor here? Why humiliate me in public? Eleanor's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but her voice remained firm. Humiliate you? She laughed bitterly. You're the one parading your mistress while I'm pregnant with your child. She took a step forward. Did you really think I would stay silent? Lara tried to intervene, but Victor silenced her with an icy stare. Then he addressed Sterling. If you have any respect left for Eleanor, you'll handle this with dignity. For a moment, Sterling's shoulders slumped. Remorse flickered across his face. But then, Lara clung to his arm, a reminder of the path he had chosen. Sterling was at a crossroads with the whole city, and more importantly with Eleanor waiting to see which side he would take. The aftermath, fallout, and new paths. The confrontation on the terrace ended quickly. Lara feigned indignation, playing the role of the aggrieved girlfriend. But many noticed that her anger seemed to stem more from the threat to her own ambitions than from genuine love for Sterling. Eleanor, tears close to spilling, turned away, refusing to let the mistress see her vulnerability. Victor escorted her off the terrace, offering a dignified exit from a profoundly undignified situation. When they returned to the ballroom, a wave of curious glances and hushed conversations greeted them. Eleanor's heart pounded. With a mix of rage, pain, and newfound determination, she clung to Victor's arm, grateful for his unwavering support. Meanwhile, on the terrace, Sterling and Lara remained. The tension between them was unmistakable. Lara whispered through gritted teeth. That was humiliating. She glared at him with contained fury. How did you not warn me your wife would be here? And pregnant, no less. And with Victor Thorne, of all people. Sterling ran a hand through his hair, exhaling in frustration. I had no idea my dear Eleanor was coming. Believe me, this wasn't in my plans. He shot Lara a look, questioning her choices for a moment. And 2, don't forget it was you who insisted on making our relationship public. Well, here's the result. Lara's eyes narrowed. Now you're blaming me? She leaned slightly towards him. Did you see the way Victor looked at you? He could destroy you. You're lucky if he doesn't start poking around your finances or your businesses. A flash of fear crossed Sterling's face. Lara was right. If Victor decided to use his resources against him, the consequences could be catastrophic. But Sterling wouldn't be intimidated. He straightened, smoothed his suit, and adopted his typical posture of control. Let's not make a scene. Finish our obligations here. Then we'll talk privately about our next step. His voice was cold, calculating. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, the event continued. The presenter took the stage, inviting donors to pledge their support for the Bright Futures Foundation. Attendees applauded as astronomical sums of money appeared on the digital screen. But behind the philanthropic facade, The night's real story captivated everyone's attention. Social media exploded with photos of Eleanor and Victor arriving together. Scandalous headlines appeared in minutes. CEO Victor Thorne rescues betrayed wife from Millionaire's infidelity scandal. A quiet corner and unwavering support. Eleanor and Victor found a corner near the drinks table. Some people approached with polite concern, but most kept a cautious distance. Eleanor took a glass of water from a waiter but barely touched it. She felt cold despite the warmth of the crowded room. Victor leaned towards her, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "I'm proud you stood up for yourself, but I'm worried about your stress levels." He paused. "Perhaps we should leave." Eleanor hesitated. She was exhausted, but something within her resisted leaving. "I need to show him he can't scare me." She gripped the glass in her hand. "I'll stay a bit longer, at least until the main announcements are over." Victor nodded, respecting her decision. Deep down, he admired her more than ever, but he also felt a fleeting remorse. He had contributed to Sterling's rise. He never imagined how power could corrupt him. Now, he silently promised to be Eleanor's shield against any storm Sterling tried to unleash. As the gala continued, an undercurrent of anticipation ran through the room. Everyone wondered, would Eleanor leave in tears, or remain unflappable? Would Sterling's star plummet after this blatant display of infidelity, or would he emerge unscathed, propped up by his wealth and influence? Only time and perhaps Victor Thorne's next move would tell. The days after, allies emerge. In the weeks that followed, rumors exploded like an unstoppable storm. Some sensational tabloids screamed dramatic headlines, "Millionaire Showdown," the confrontation that shook the elite. Meanwhile, society columns published anonymous testimonies with juicy details about Lara's audacious public reveal. Eleanor, though mortified, found solace in the outpouring of support she received. Old friends, even strangers, people who identified with her pain. A network of unexpected allies. She wasn't alone. Several people quickly rallied to her side. Sarah Jenkins, her childhood friend and legal advisor at Sterling's company. After her initial warning, she redoubled her efforts to help Eleanor. She arranged meetings with top-tier divorce lawyers and helped gather more evidence on Sterling's murky finances. If this turned into a legal battle, Eleanor would not be unprepared. Marion Cross, an influential philanthropist and Eleanor's mentor in her early days in public relations. She had always admired Eleanor's dedication to charitable causes. Outraged by Sterling's public treatment of Eleanor, she mobilized social support in her favor. Every time Sterling tried to manipulate the narrative to make Eleanor seem unstable or jealous, he faced a wall of disapproval from key society figures. Marcus Thorne, CEO and Sterling's former confidant. After witnessing Eleanor's public humiliation, he reconsidered his friendship with Sterling. He reached out to Victor, expressing his indignation. He offered to connect Eleanor with financial experts who could discreetly review Sterling's assets and ensure she and her child were protected in case of separation. Eleanor, who once feared being isolated and helpless, suddenly found herself at the center of a network of powerful allies. Her position was not as weak as Sterling had assumed. Victor's steadfast support and Sterling's reckoning. Meanwhile, Victor remained in frequent contact, visiting Eleanor at home, ensuring she and the baby were well. His presence became a constant refuge. But speculation soon followed. Some tabloids hinted at a secret romance. Victor Thorne, the knight in shining armor, stealing a millionaire's wife. Eleanor ignored the rumors. Victor did too. But Sterling couldn't. Why? For the first time, he realized he might lose everything. Not just his empire, but the only woman who had ever truly loved him. Eleanor trusted Victor. She knew his intentions were purely protective and philanthropic. He was a man who believed in righting wrongs. But for Sterling, the growing alliance between Eleanor and Victor was a mix of anger and paranoia. Lara, meanwhile, fueled the flames, warning him that Eleanor was gathering legal ammunition. Sterling reacted with desperation. He made late-night calls to his lawyers, frantically reviewed his finances, trying to hide any illicit activity. He launched a private investigation to discover who was leaking information to Eleanor. But his attempts to regain control slipped through his hands. Every time he tried to make a triumphant public appearance with Laura, the press inevitably mentioned Eleanor's dignity and Victor's philanthropic empire. Investors began to grow uneasy, sensing that the scandal could affect Sterling's business. Tensions escalated behind the scenes. The question was no longer if there would be a reckoning, but when, and who would hold the decisive power when everything collapsed. The first blow and Sterling's cracking world. For Sterling Hayes, the first sign of impending disaster arrived in the form of an official letter. The Securities and Exchange Commission demanded documents related to his offshore accounts, the same ones he naively believed hidden behind layers of shell companies. Someone somewhere had alerted the authorities. He couldn't prove it, but he suspected Victor or even Sarah. Paranoia consumed him. Sleepless nights. Frantic calls to his legal team. But if the SEC investigation wasn't enough, his relationship with Laura also began to crumble. Laura hadn't signed up for this. She wasn't interested in a man under investigation whose fortune could be confiscated if the accusations were true. She started missing their dates, excusing herself with important business. Their electric connection became strained, each accusing the other of disloyalty, until Laura made it clear she might cut her losses and leave if Sterling's empire showed signs of collapse. An impending legal scandal, a mistress losing patience, and an empire teetering. Sterling began to lose control. His employees whispered about his erratic behavior. He abruptly fired anyone he deemed disloyal. He canceled important meetings at the last minute. He even lost his composure in front of key investors. Meanwhile, Eleanor moved with calm precision. With Sarah's help, she compiled documents, text messages, and photographs of Sterling's transgressions, both personal and professional. But a part of her hesitated. One part wanted to expose him completely, to make him face the consequences of his betrayal. But another remembered the man she once loved. She knew that destroying him completely would also affect their child, a child who deserved a father free from scandal and prison cells. Yet Eleanor also prioritized her own security. She ordered her legal team to prepare a sealed divorce petition. If Sterling refused a fair settlement, she would simply give the order, and everything would be set in motion. If he tried dirty tricks, she would be ready to counterattack. Meanwhile, Victor made his own moves. He used his network to ensure Eleanor's security and stability. Investigators loyal to him uncovered more evidence of Sterling's irregularities. Undeclared funds, insider trading, bribes in foreign markets. Slowly, Victor built a protective wall around Eleanor and her future. He never advocated for revenge, only for justice. Sterling's collapse and Lara's calculated retreat. Rumors of his imminent fall spread quickly. Board members began to question his leadership. Some suggested replacing him to protect the company's reputation. This only fueled Sterling's desperation. He was losing control of his business. He was losing control of the narrative. And, most humiliatingly, he was losing control over the wife he once believed submissive. And then, the final blow came. Late one night, Lara packed her bags, leaving only a brief note. She wasn't willing to risk her own future for a sinking ship. When Sterling discovered her departure, he felt a mix of betrayal and a twisted relief. At least she was no longer in the equation. But now he was completely alone, facing a storm he had created himself. He stood in his luxurious penthouse, gazing at the city lights, that city that once represented his unstoppable rise. And finally, he faced the brutal truth. The empire he built with ambition, cunning, and a touch of deceit was crumbling. And Eleanor, the woman he underestimated, was the catalyst for it all. He didn't know whether to blame her or himself. Lara Dubois hadn't truly retreated. She had left Sterling's penthouse, but her exit wasn't a flight. From a luxurious suite at the Falcon Hotel, she sipped champagne while scrolling through news headlines. Sterling Hayes' empire in freefall. She observed it with a thoughtful smile, weighing her options. Though she enjoyed the spectacle of being among the millionaire elite, she never intended to go down with the ship. Her lifestyle depended on aligning with power. And now that Sterling no longer had it, it was time to find her next grand prize. She initiated a calculated withdrawal, ensuring she left no incriminating evidence at Sterling's residence. Every expensive handbag, every piece of jewelry he had given her, was carefully stored in a safety deposit box rented under a pseudonym. She knew from experience how quickly assets could be seized in the midst of a legal collapse. While Sterling struggled to prevent his empire from crumbling, Lara was already exploring her next opportunity. She had a global network of contacts, magnates, executives, and aristocrats who might welcome her with open arms, seduced by her company and her strategic social skills. However, there was one detail that bothered her: Victor Thorne's presence. His powerful aura and the respect he commanded intrigued her more than she was willing to admit. She remembered how he had looked at her at the gala. Unimpressed, unemotional, almost indifferent. Men usually did anything to get a second glance from Lara. Victor, however, seemed immune to her charms and oblivious to Sterling's spectacle. Lara's last stand and Victor's unyielding morality. Lara decided on a new strategy. She tried to find out more about Victor. Rumors circulated. Old money, philanthropic ties, and an unwavering moral compass. Precisely the kind of man rarely susceptible to the manipulations that had served Lara so well in the past. And yet, she couldn't shake the thought of winning his favor. After all, if Sterling's fall was inevitable, an alliance with someone like Victor Thorne could be her next stepping stone. Through a discreet contact at Thorne Capital, Lara arranged an accidental encounter at an art auction. She presented herself in a sophisticated black dress, radiating serene elegance. However, when Victor arrived, he barely spared her a glance. He was there for philanthropic business, bidding on a set of paintings to support a local charity. Lara tried to initiate casual conversation, but Victor responded with distant courtesy. He knew perfectly well who she was and how much she had contributed to Eleanor's suffering. Undaunted, Lara decided to play her last card: sincerity. She intercepted him after he won a painting. In a soft voice, she said, "I never meant to hurt Eleanor. Sterling told me a different story about their marriage, that it was already over, that she was just a gold digger using his name to climb society." Victor's blue eyes gleamed with barely disguised disdain. "And you believed him? Or was it simply the version of events that suited you best?" Lara's cheeks flushed. "Perhaps I was naive. I see it now, but I'm not the villain everyone paints me as. I have a genuine interest in philanthropy. Perhaps we could." Victor interrupted her with a dry shake of his head. "If you truly want to mend what you broke, start by apologizing to Eleanor. And stay out of her way." He turned and left, leaving Lara staring at him in disbelief. In an instant, her meticulous plans shattered against an implacable rejection. It was then she understood that Victor Thorne was not just immune to her charm. He despised her. For the first time, Lara found herself without a clear path to ascend the social ladder. And though she still retained her cunning, she had the unsettling feeling that, in a world shaped by moral guardians like Victor, her reign as the queen of opportunists was coming to an end. What do you think of Lara's attempt to win over Victor? Do you think she deserved his cold rejection? Share your thoughts below. Sterling's desperation and a glimmer of hope. As the investigation intensified, Sterling faced the grim reality that he could be indicted if more incriminating evidence surfaced. Desperation led him to request a private meeting with Victor Thorne. Perhaps, he thought, his old mentor would offer him a lifeline, or at least remain silent about any compromising information he might possess. Swallowing his pride, Sterling made the call. They met in a glass-walled conference room at an exclusive downtown private club. Sterling arrived with a forced air of confidence, though the dark circles under his eyes told a different story. Victor was already there, hands clasped on the mahogany table, his face inscrutable. After a tense silence, Sterling spoke. "I appreciate you seeing me, Victor." Victor inclined his head slightly. "You said it was urgent." "I'm listening." Sterling cleared his throat, his mouth dry, words stuck. "Look, I know you disapprove of what happened with Eleanor. And yes, I made mistakes. But I don't deserve to lose everything. You and I have history. You once called me your protege. Victor's gaze remained steady. That was before you strayed from ethics and basic decency. A flash of anger crossed Sterling, but he suppressed it, striving to keep his voice calm. I need your help. I know you have contacts in regulatory bodies. If you could intercede for me, I could fix this, make restitution. Whatever it takes, just don't let them destroy me. I have a child on the way. Victor remained thoughtful for a moment. His relationship with Sterling had moved from admiration to disappointment, and now dangerously close to pity. Do you realize what you did to Eleanor? To your unborn child? While she carried your future, you paraded another woman in public. Sterling lowered his gaze. His attempt at stoicism crumbled completely. Eleanor was always too good for me. I see that now. But please, Victor, you know how this world works. If the prosecution indicts me, my reputation will be ruined. I won't be able to provide for my child as I had planned. Victor exhaled a long, measured sigh. I can speak to certain people who might give you time to confess your offshore dealings, but this is not a promise to clear your name. The law is the law. If you choose not to disclose everything or if you try to manipulate the system, you'll be on your own. Understood. Sterling swallowed hard and nodded quickly. Yes, I'll do whatever it takes. Cooperate. Victor leaned back in his chair, a faint shadow of sadness crossing his face. You also owe Eleanor an apology. You must reach a fair settlement for her and the baby. If you don't, I will personally ensure every piece of evidence reaches the authorities. Though the words stung, Sterling understood this was likely his only chance to preserve a shred of dignity. I will. Thank you, Victor. I promise I won't forget this. Victor stood, ending the meeting. Just don't betray that promise. As he left the private club, Sterling felt a mixture of relief and dread. He realized that his path to redemption required swallowing his pride, confessing his mistakes, and making peace with Eleanor. It wouldn't be easy, especially for a man whose entire life had been built on ambition and a refusal to show weakness. But perhaps, in his darkest hour, he could still find a way to save what truly mattered. Sterling's fall from grace and Eleanor's newfound strength. In the weeks that followed, Sterling embarked on a chaotic process of damage control. As Victor had warned, the SEC's scrutiny didn't relent just because he sought a private conversation with the CEO. However, a combination of voluntary disclosures, cooperation with investigators, and restitution payments to affected parties gave him a reprieve. He negotiated a deal that allowed him to avoid the worst-case scenario, a full criminal trial. Nevertheless, the weight of the fines and the stain on his reputation were devastating. Shareholders demanded new leadership, forcing him to resign as CEO of his own company. The board's decision was swift. They chose an interim CEO, a sensible veteran from the same firm. Sterling was relegated to a merely symbolic role, without any real authority. The press wasted no time in kicking him while he was down. The man once hailed as a visionary entrepreneur was now tainted by scandal. Every headline brought back references to his infidelity, turning him into a cautionary tale about the perils of overconfidence. Eleanor followed these developments with mixed feelings. She couldn't fully rejoice in his downfall because she still remembered the man she married, the one who used to tuck roses into her hair on a quiet Sunday afternoon. But the pain he had caused demanded justice. Their relationship was too damaged to be repaired, but for the sake of their unborn child, Eleanor chose a path of cautious cooperation. Her legal team initiated divorce proceedings, but also presented a settlement plan that would guarantee financial support for their child without completely stripping Sterling of his dignity. She insisted on full custody, while allowing Sterling regular visitation, provided he demonstrated a genuine effort to change. For weeks, Sterling hesitated, suspecting it was all a trap. But when no further retaliation emerged, he understood that Eleanor was sincere. The day he signed the divorce agreement, he felt a profound sense of loss, an acceptance that he had squandered something invaluable. Lara's new path and the evolution of Eleanor and Victor. Lara's life also took a sharp turn. After being rejected by Victor, she briefly considered approaching other wealthy prospects, but her name was stained by the association with Sterling's scandal, closing many doors. She tried to salvage her reputation by pivoting to philanthropy, ironically leveraging the contacts she had made during her brief stint in Sterling's life. She created a small foundation for child literacy, likely an attempt to improve her public image. But, genuine or not, the initiative offered her a chance to reinvent herself. In time, she gained a small following, though she never regained the influence she once had in Sterling's shadow. As for Victor Thorne, his role as Eleanor's ally evolved into something deeper. At first, it was a friendship based on mutual respect and empathy. Victor admired her strength. Eleanor appreciated his unwavering sense of honor. They spent hours discussing philanthropic initiatives, local charities, and innovative ways to help disadvantaged communities. Eleanor discovered that Victor's motivation for charity stemmed from a personal loss. The premature death of his sister had awakened in him a desire to make the world a more compassionate place. When Eleanor gave birth to her daughter, Isabel Hayes, Victor was one of the first to visit her in the hospital. He brought a simple bouquet of lilies, a stark contrast to the ostentatious gifts from other acquaintances. Eleanor was touched by the gesture, and together they shared a silent moment, gazing at the little one, who carried in her blood both Sterling's inheritance and Eleanor's determination. The innocence in Isabel's eyes reminded Eleanor of the immense responsibility she now held. Sterling's attempt at redemption and Eleanor's flourishing life. In the following months, Sterling attempted to redeem himself as a father, starting with supervised visits. At first, he cradled Isabel with trembling arms, his eyes filled with tears. Eleanor couldn't fully discern if those tears were from guilt or genuine love, but she allowed him the space to form a bond with his daughter. Sterling made no further attempts to seek forgiveness in their marriage. Perhaps he had understood the irreversibility of what he had done. Instead, he focused on rebuilding a shred of trust with Eleanor, solely within the context of co-parenting. Some days were easier than others. Sterling began therapy, a decision that even surprised himself. In those sessions, he confronted the insecurities of his childhood, the same ones that had fueled his relentless desire for success. He was forced to acknowledge how his need for validation had blinded him to the emotional devastation he had caused others, especially Eleanor. Progress was slow but evident. Though still seen as a pariah in business circles, he found opportunities in lesser-known ventures willing to leverage his expertise. He accepted a job as a consultant at a small tech startup in Seattle, traveling back on weekends to see Isabel. Meanwhile, Eleanor flourished. Freed from the shadows of an unhappy marriage, she embraced her creative passions. She partnered with Marion Cross to launch a new nonprofit project, Heart to Heart, focused on providing emotional and financial support to pregnant women facing abandonment or domestic conflict. The cause resonated deeply with her own story. Donations began pouring in, driven by the endorsement of public figures and even Victor Thorne's philanthropic contacts. Inevitably, rumors arose about Eleanor and Victor's closeness. Gossip blogs eagerly speculated about a blossoming romance between the billionaire philanthropist and the newly divorced mother. For a long time, Eleanor chose not to address the rumors, partly because she herself wasn't sure of her feelings. She valued Victor's friendship, appreciating the security and wisdom he offered. However, a new spark began to ignite, one that felt authentic, built on mutual admiration and not on scandal or ambition. Victor and Eleanor's new beginning. It happened on an autumn day, months after Isabel's birth, when Victor invited Eleanor to tour a new community center he had funded in an underserved neighborhood. As they walked through the halls, discussing the expansion of childcare areas and counseling rooms, their hands accidentally brushed. Eleanor looked up and saw in Victor's eyes a warmth that mirrored her own nascent affection. In that silent moment, they recognized a budding intimacy. They didn't rush it. Both were fully aware that Eleanor was still healing from the wounds left by Sterling's betrayals. Victor was patient, letting her set the pace. Their first official date was a simple dinner at a modest Italian bistro, far from the city's ostentatious venues. They talked for hours between bites of homemade pasta, discovering shared values and a similar aspiration. A quiet, meaningful life, far from the false luxuries of wealth. Despite this, Eleanor never lost sight of her priority, Isabel. She was determined to raise her daughter with love and stability. To her surprise, Sterling occasionally showed flashes of sincerity. One morning, he sent her a message. "Thank you for allowing me to be part of Isabel's life. I won't fail her as I did you." The words touched Eleanor, though they were also tinged with the sadness of what could have been. A chapter closes, a new one begins. The public fascination with the scandal eventually faded, replaced by new headlines about celebrity dramas and political controversies. Eleanor's story became a footnote in the press. The pregnant wife who confronted her millionaire husband's betrayal and emerged stronger. But in private, her life was no cautionary tale. It was a new path, defined by compassion, resilience, and hope. The final chapter of Sterling's downfall settled like dust, leaving lessons for everyone involved. Laura learned that opportunism has its limits, especially when confronted with unwavering morality like Victor's. Sterling understood that empty success, without loyalty or integrity, inevitably collapses. And Eleanor found her voice, ensuring she would never again be overshadowed by someone else's ambition or betrayal. Eleanor and Victor's future. As the years passed, the relationship between Eleanor and Victor deepened silently. When Isabel took her first steps, Victor was there, encouraging her with the same joy as Eleanor. He didn't take the place of a father. That space still belonged to Sterling, but he provided warmth and paternal guidance in his own way. At community events, all three adults managed to maintain a functional relationship. Sterling, no longer possessing the air of arrogance that once defined him, appreciated Victor's presence, if only because his support ensured Eleanor and Isabel lived comfortably. Finally, Victor proposed to Eleanor in an intimate moment, away from the public eye. During a candlelight dinner at his residence, with Isabel asleep in the nursery upstairs, he knelt and pulled out a simple ring. Tears filled Eleanor's eyes as she remembered all the pain of the past. All the suffering that preceded this moment crossed her mind. And yet, there he stood, a man who had shown her unwavering loyalty, respect, and kindness. She said yes without hesitation. For a time, their engagement remained private, shared only with close friends and family. When the news finally leaked, it was surprisingly scandal-free. By then, Eleanor was a respected philanthropist in her own right, and Victor an almost legendary figure of conscious capitalism. Their union symbolized more than a romance. It represented the triumph of decency over betrayal, resilience over heartbreak. Eleanor and Victor's wedding. On a sunny afternoon, they married in a small ceremony in Marianne Cross's garden. Isabel was the flower girl, scattering rose petals down the aisle, surrounded by the couple's closest friends and family. Sterling appeared, standing at the back, silently watching the ceremony. He had come to give his blessing and be present for Isabel on a day that would shape their family's future. He left shortly after, but not before exchanging a look of respect with Victor and whispering to Eleanor, "Truly, I'm happy for you." Eleanor's hand tightened around Victor's, recognizing the layers of bittersweet feelings that enveloped that instant, the meaning of everything they had lived through. In the end, all the pain had led her to a place of genuine love, gratitude, and purpose. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of ambition, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. If you were captivated by the scandal of a millionaire flaunting his mistress only to be surprised by his pregnant wife's unexpected arrival, if you were moved by the unexpected alliances and moments of personal reflection, then show us your support. Like this video if the story kept you on the edge of your seat. Share it with friends who enjoy real-life drama wrapped in heartwarming twists. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next stories. Every tale we share explores the complexity of human relationships, providing cautionary lessons and glimpses of hope. Your support helps us grow and continue bringing you impactful stories. So, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more fascinating dramas.